The silent watchers. The stars blinked silently, distant and uncaring, as the fleet of the Galactic Empire descended into the outer reaches of the solar system. The Empire's scouts, sleek and invisible to the naked eye, hovered just beyond the outer rim of the galaxy, cloaked by technology so advanced it could bend the very fabric of space itself. No one could see them, not even the most sophisticated sensors Earth had. In the heart of the Imperial flagship Arcanus, Commander Vornix paced slowly, his boots echoing on the cold, metallic floor. His thoughts were elsewhere, focused on the blue planet he had just discovered, Earth. A small, seemingly insignificant speck in the vastness of the cosmos, but one that had drawn his attention like no other. He stopped in front of the holographic map, which projected a real-time image of the solar system. His fingers hovered over Earth, its serene appearance belying the chaos beneath. Vornix's sharp, calculating eyes narrowed as he read the preliminary scan results. Primitive space programs, crude rockets, and a fragile network of satellites. Another backward species, Vornix muttered to himself, almost disappointed. Why do they even bother trying? Behind him, Lieutenant Aris, a younger officer with a keen mind for strategy, spoke up from the comms station. "Commander, we've detected communication signals from the planet. They call themselves humans." Vornix turned, his curiosity piqued despite his better judgment. "Humans," he repeated, almost tasting the word as though it was something unfamiliar. "What do they want?" Aris typed a few commands, and the communications feed shifted, bringing up a flickering message from Earth. "We are Earth. We are united. And we demand to be free," the voice crackled across the bridge. "We will not surrender to anyone." Vornix stood silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of the words. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "They have spirit," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "But it will be their downfall." The report from their scouts confirmed his suspicion. Earth was a young, struggling civilization. Their military capabilities were laughable at best. Basic nuclear weapons, primitive rockets, and rudimentary ships orbiting their planet like children playing with fire. They were no match for the might of the Galactic Empire. "Prepare the cleansing fleet," Vornix ordered coldly, his voice like steel. "Send them the ultimatum. 30 days to surrender or face annihilation. Let's show them the consequences of defiance." As the order was relayed through the ship's intercom, no one aboard Arcanus noticed something strange. They failed to detect the faint ripple in space, quantum fluctuations that hinted at an anomaly they couldn't explain. Hidden deep beneath the surface of Mars, something was watching them. And it wasn't human. The hidden hand. The Empire had no idea they were being watched. Beneath the Martian surface, in a cavernous facility that had been abandoned by the world's governments decades ago, the hum of advanced technology vibrated through the walls. The facility, known only to a select few, was a relic of Earth's forgotten past, a place of secrets buried long ago. Here, an entirely different war was unfolding, one that was invisible to the Empire and beyond their comprehension. Inside a massive control room, a single figure stood hunched over a series of glowing monitors, their face obscured by a hood. The operator, known only as Shadow, adjusted a few dials and ran another check on the sensors. "They're here," Shadow whispered, his voice a mere rasp. On the screen, the fleet of the Galactic Empire was clearly visible, its ships positioned across the solar system like ominous shadows. Each Imperial vessel, cloaked in its stealth technology, remained invisible to conventional scanners. Yet, thanks to decades of secret research and human ingenuity, the facility's systems were capable of something far more advanced than what the Empire could ever fathom. "It's time," Shadow muttered as he keyed in the final command. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, sending a signal that could not be intercepted, a frequency that the Empire's technology could not detect. High above, on the bridge of Arcanus, Commander Vornix's orders had just been relayed to the fleet. The cleansing would begin soon. Earth would fall, just like all the others. Yet, something was off. Something his senses hadn't caught, something that had gone unnoticed in the quiet of space. Without warning, the flagship's communications console flared to life. A series of distorted, garbled voices cut through the silence, their content incomprehensible at first. Then, the voice of a human broke through, clear and steady, like a whisper from the void. "Commander Vornix, do you truly believe you control the galaxy? That you can just stamp out life with your superior weapons?" Vornix's eyes widened as he heard the message, his fingers instinctively hovering over his console. This was impossible. They had not sent any communication to Earth in return. They had given their ultimatum, and it should have been silence by now. He looked around, his expression tightening. "Find the source of this transmission," he ordered sharply. His mind raced. Had they somehow detected them? Was this some trick? The voice continued, as if mocking the Empire's arrogance. "You are not the first to come here, Vornix, and you will not be the last to fall. Humanity will not bow to you." A strange chill ran down the commander's spine. He was used to crushing enemies with overwhelming force, but this felt different. Something about the confidence in the voice made him hesitate. The humans weren't as naive as he thought. On Earth, millions of people had no idea what was happening. They went about their daily lives, unaware that the galaxy was about to collide with their planet. But there were those who did know, the ones who had prepared for this day for years. They had expected this moment, had calculated every move. In a secure underground facility in Colorado, a group of high-ranking military officials stood around a large table, staring at a projection of Earth's sky. General Harper, a grizzled veteran of numerous covert operations, watched the data stream in from the Martian base. "This isn't just a battle," she said, her voice grave. "This is humanity's chance to show what we can do. The Empire doesn't know what it's up against." Harper looked at her team, the best of the best. "It's time to activate Project Horizon." Project Horizon had been humanity's last-ditch effort to protect the Earth from an invasion like this, an initiative launched in secrecy long before Earth even made its first tentative steps into space. It was a countermeasure, a final weapon that humanity had built in response to the growing number of alien species making their way into human space. And now, as the first wave of Imperial ships silently orbited the planet, it was ready to be unleashed. The Empire's blindness. In the cold, unfeeling expanse of space, the Imperial fleet moved in perfect synchronization, each ship a reflection of the Empire's power, silent, efficient, and deadly. But all their precision, all their superiority in technology, couldn't see the invisible force moving against them. Humanity had learned the hard way to work in shadows, and their most critical asset was about to take center stage. Back on Mars, in the bowels of the secret base, Shadow leaned back in his chair, his fingers still hovering over the holographic controls. The message had been sent, but he wasn't done yet. He was part of a network, a far-reaching web that spanned the globe and stretched into the depths of space, woven together by decades of clandestine research and human ingenuity. His eyes flicked over the monitors. Across the solar system, humanity's quiet resistance was already in motion. While the Empire's scouts were still hunting for clues, the humans had already set their traps. The very technology that had been developed for peaceful exploration was now turned into a weapon of subtlety and surprise. "Let's see how long you last," Shadow whispered under his breath, his fingers tapping an ancient, hidden key that sent another command cascading through the data network. A few light-years away, on the bridge of Arcanus, Vornix continued to watch the feed of his fleet's movements. His brow furrowed. The signals were becoming increasingly erratic. His fleet was positioned perfectly, ready to carry out the conquest. But the strange transmission from Earth had unsettled him. "Have the Earthlings detected us?" he muttered, a flicker of doubt creeping into his otherwise steely composure. He had seen thousands of species fall under the Empire's might, and yet something about these humans troubled him. Suddenly, an officer's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Sir, We are picking up an anomaly on the far edge of the system. It's faint, but we cannot explain it. Vornix's pulse quickened. What kind of anomaly? He demanded, his voice colder than ever. The officer hesitated, glancing nervously at the readout. We don't know, Commander. It's as if something is blocking our sensors. Some sort of interference we cannot identify. It's coming from near the asteroid belt. Vornix scowled. It's a trick, he growled, slamming his fist on the console. Activate all scanning frequencies. Nothing slips past us. Meanwhile, far below the surface of Mars, a quiet voice echoed through the darkened control room. The room, illuminated only by the eerie glow of monitors, held the heartbeat of humanity's counterattack. General Harper stood in front of a wall of screens, the faint hum of machines the only sound around her. She studied the readouts with intense focus. It's starting. Around her, the team of engineers, analysts, and scientists continued their work, their faces drawn with the weight of the operation. They had been preparing for years, building a weapon that would tilt the balance of power. And now it was time to deploy it. Harper gave a single nod. Initiate the sequence. At once, the complex network that stretched across Earth's military infrastructure sprang to life. Deep space satellites, hidden on the farthest reaches of the solar system, began to stir. Their mission: to create an artificial field of interference so powerful that it would scramble the Empire's most sophisticated technology. Humanity's weapon wasn't one of destructive force or overwhelming firepower. It was a weapon of deception, designed to create confusion and uncertainty in the Empire's ranks. The technology had been developed in secrecy over decades. Project Horizon was the culmination of everything humanity had learned from alien encounters, a tool to make even the mightiest fleets stumble in the dark. Back on Arcanus, Vornix stared at the new readings on his screen. The anomaly was growing, becoming more pronounced, and the pattern was unmistakable. They've done something, Vornix muttered, his voice tight with frustration. Activate full-spectrum scanning. Target all signals at the source. I want everything we have thrown at this, now. His command rippled through the Imperial fleet, but no matter how hard they tried, the interference was only getting stronger. Systems began to glitch, the once crystal-clear communications were disrupted by static, and minor systems failed intermittently. Vornix felt the familiar grip of frustration tighten in his chest. This isn't just a simple trick, he growled. This is something far more advanced than we imagined. Meanwhile, on Earth, Shadow watched the results with a quiet, knowing smile. His fingers hovered over the last command, waiting for the signal. The Empire had played right into humanity's hands. Welcome to the beginning of the end, Shadow said softly, hitting the final key. With every passing second, the Empire's dominance over the galaxy began to waver. The human response, quiet and methodical, was proving to be far more than the Empire had bargained for. And as the shadow of Earth's defenses fell over the Imperial fleet, a new war had begun, one where humanity's ingenuity would be their most powerful weapon. The trap tightens. Space was silent, eerily so. The Imperial fleet, in all its might, had now crossed the threshold of the asteroid belt, and the fleet commander, Vornix, could see it clearly on his bridge. Earth's defenses, what little he had been able to glean from their communications and surveillance, was slipping from view. Something was wrong, and every fiber of his being told him it wasn't a mistake. The fleet had come in unopposed, as expected, but the interference from earlier was now persistent, like an invisible hand tugging at the strings of the vast Empire's technological superiority. Every scanner, every radar, every sensor was glitching. The cloak of superiority that the Empire had worn for centuries seemed to be unraveling, thread by thread. "Sir, we've encountered another anomaly," the sensor officer reported, her voice tight with the weight of her words. "Another." Vornix's voice crackled with disbelief. "What now?" The officer's screen flickered again. "It's..." She hesitated, her face pale. "We are detecting Multiple energy spikes from the asteroid belt. They're unlike anything we've seen before. Vornix's hand gripped the edge of the command chair, his knuckles whitening. His thoughts raced. It couldn't be. The humans had been primitive. Their technology was far behind the Empire's. How could they have? Shields up. Prepare for immediate countermeasures, he'd barked. But it was too late. Before anyone could react, a shockwave rippled through the fleet. The sudden explosion of light and energy from the asteroid field seemed to stretch the very fabric of space. The sensors went haywire. For a brief moment, every ship in the Imperial fleet felt as though they were caught in a storm of magnetic pulses and cosmic distortions, their technology scrambling to make sense of it. On the Arcanus, the bridge lights flickered, and every screen blinked in chaotic succession. What in the galaxy is happening? Vornix shouted, now standing as the floor beneath him trembled. He braced himself against the console, trying to regain some semblance of control. But the damage had already been done. His fleet was now blind, vulnerable, and separated by a vast void that no Imperial strategy could account for. Beneath the surface of Mars, Shadow's eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction as the pulse rippled across the system. The energy fields had activated perfectly, pushing the boundaries of what humanity had learned in secret over the last several decades. Earth's Covert project had triggered the first phase of a multi-layered defense grid, one the Empire had no hope of understanding until it was too late. As the Empire's ships struggled to regain their senses, another stage of the trap was set in motion. Humanity wasn't just reacting to the Empire's invasion, they were leading them into a calculated, intricate snare, and it was about to close. Phase 1 complete, Shadow muttered to himself, his fingers flying across the console. His work wasn't done yet, but the Empire had now entered their home field. They were blind, disoriented, and utterly unaware of the next move humanity had waiting. Back on Earth, General Harper stood tall before the Global Command Center's main holographic display. A massive map of the solar system glowed in front of her, showing the frantic movement of Imperial ships as they scrambled to regain their coordination. She exchanged a glance with her lead strategist, Colonel Jensen, who was reviewing the data streaming in from Mars. "It worked," Jensen said, a grin creeping across his face. "We've hit them harder than we anticipated." Harper remained calm, her eyes never leaving the map. She knew better than to celebrate just yet. The first move had been successful, but the Empire wasn't easily deterred. It would take more than a few pulses to bring down their fleet. "Keep the pressure on them," Harper ordered, her voice steady. "Phase 2 is ready, but we need to make sure the fleet doesn't recover. This is our one chance." Jensen nodded. "We'll keep them scrambling. Prepare the final phase." On Arcanus, Vornix's frustration was palpable. His fleet was scattered, unable to lock onto their original targets. Their primary weapon systems were offline, their advanced sensors were utterly useless in the face of the disorienting energy fluctuations. "We need to regain control," Vornix snarled, but his eyes darted to the view screen, which now showed the Earth's moon in the distance. The humans had yet to engage in any direct combat, but they were playing a dangerous game. "Deploy our assault ships," he commanded, trying to regain his composure. "Get them in close and ready to neutralize whatever's causing this. We'll move in swiftly and wipe out the human fleet before they can regroup." But deep inside the Arcanus, something strange was beginning to happen. The familiar hum of the ship's engines began to falter, their once smooth movement now jagged and jerky. Officers scrambled, unable to fix the malfunction. No one could explain it. "Commander," an officer reported, her voice faltering, "the engines are failing. We can't stabilize the ship's orbit." Vornix's face twisted with rage. What? And then, as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart, the Imperial flagship Arcanus lurched violently. A sudden, powerful force from the asteroid field, another anomaly, perfectly timed, struck the ship's rear engines. The lights on the bridge flickered once more, and the massive flagship began to drift helplessly toward the gravity well of the planet. As the Empire's flagship slowly spiraled into an uncontrollable descent, the humans on Earth could only watch. The plan was working, but they knew it was far from over. The Empire was relentless, and they wouldn't stay down for long. But for now, humanity had pulled off the impossible, and the trap was about to snap shut. The Empire's descent. The vast Imperial fleet, once an unchallenged force of destruction, now drifted aimlessly in space like wounded predators caught in a trap of their own making. The Arcanus, flagship of the Empire's greatest commander, Vornix, was crippled, unable to move or communicate with the rest of the fleet. The once gleaming hull of the mighty warship now floated helplessly toward Earth's moon as its crew scrambled to regain control of the failing systems. "This is an embarrassment," Vornix growled, clutching the edge of his command chair. His eyes were fixed on the view screen, where the Earth's moon grew larger by the moment. The once secure dominance of the Empire was now a distant memory, replaced by a creeping sense of vulnerability. A young officer approached hesitantly, her voice shaking. "Commander, we've lost all communications with the fleet. Our systems are being overridden by an unknown force. We're completely isolated." Vornix's face tightened. He knew the humans were behind this, but how had they managed to strike such a devastating blow? The Empire had never encountered anything like this, an enemy who struck not with force but with cunning. Shadow leaned back in his chair, watching the chaos unfold on his monitors. The first part of the plan had been a success beyond his wildest expectations. The interference had crippled the Imperial fleet's communication and navigation systems, and now, humanity's most well-kept secret was about to be revealed. Beneath the surface of Earth's moon, a vast network of hidden ships, long in preparation, was waiting. Years of secret construction, advanced AI-driven war machines, and weaponry that rivaled even the Empire's most fearsome creations were ready to strike. "Initiate Phase 2, Shadow murmured, fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Back on Earth, General Harper watched as the first signals came in. The Imperial fleet was in disarray, their once powerful presence now shattered into chaos. Earth's forces were poised to strike, but Harper knew they couldn't waste the opportunity. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resolve and ingenuity, but now they would learn just how deep those traits ran. "All units deploy," she ordered, her voice calm yet firm. "We've waited long enough. Let's show them what humanity can do." Hundreds of human warships, stealthy and silent, broke from their stations in orbit around Earth's moon. These were the hidden weapons, vessels that had been designed with one purpose: to annihilate the Imperial fleet in one swift, decisive blow. Back in the heart of the Empire's flagship, Vornix's mind raced. Every moment that passed without a coherent response was another moment that weakened his position. The humans had orchestrated their victory flawlessly, but even in the midst of their confusion, the Empire was not without options. They still had their firepower, their greatest advantage in the galaxy. "We must rally the fleet," Vornix growled. "Send out the signal for all assault ships to regroup. We may have lost our communication systems, but we still have the firepower to obliterate these Earthlings." But as the command left his lips, the situation only worsened. The fleet was scattered, lost in the vast reaches of space, unable to communicate with one another, with no way to coordinate an effective defense. "Phase 2 is now active," Shadow said, his voice a whisper of satisfaction. The hidden human fleet, with its advanced stealth and high-powered weaponry, was closing in. The Empire's once imposing armada had become little more than targets in a well-executed ambush. The first strike came from the edge of the asteroid field, a coordinated blast that tore through the hull of the Imperial cruiser Eviscerata, its shields flickering as the energy weapon cracked through the ship's defenses. The cruiser's communications went dark, its movements erratic as it began to list toward the edge of the solar system. "Direct hit, sir," a young officer reported with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Harper smiled, but it was brief. She had always known humanity's strength came from adaptability and resilience, and now that truth was coming to light in the form of each devastating strike. Vornik's rage was building. The sudden onslaught had left him reeling, and as the reports continued to flood in, he could see the full extent of his fleet's devastation. The humans were not the weak, primitive creatures they had once appeared to be. They were resourceful, cunning, and most importantly, unpredictable. "What are they doing?" Vornik spat, pacing across the bridge. "We've lost 4 ships in less than an hour. How is this possible?" An officer hesitated before speaking, his voice low. "The human ships, they're using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. We can't detect them until it's too late." Vornik's eyes flashed with fury. Cloaking technology? Impossible. There's no way they could have developed something of that caliber. On the other side of the battlefield, General Harper's calmness never wavered. She watched the Imperial fleet fall apart, but she knew they were still far from victory. The Empire, despite its losses, was a force to be reckoned with. They would fight back, regroup, and try to push forward. But humanity's strength was not just in their weaponry. It was in their resolve, their unity, and their ability to adapt in the face of overwhelming odds. Harper turned to her officers. "This is the moment we've been preparing for. Don't let up. We finish this now." As the human ships closed in on the remaining Imperial fleet, the second phase of the attack began. Another blast, this time from the lunar surface itself, ripped through the Imperial flagship's shields, sending it into a violent spin. The Arcanus was crippled, its once impressive form now a drifting carcass, powerless against humanity's offensive. And yet, deep within the remains of the Arcanus, Vornix refused to give up. As his fleet fell apart around him, he knew one thing for certain: the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Humanity's wrath unleashed. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, but it had become a battlefield. The once proud fleet of the Galactic Empire, now scattered and broken, was slowly retreating, but they were not running from the humans, they were running from the truth that humanity, against all odds, had turned the tide of this war. The Empire's grip on the galaxy had slipped, and now, the final stages of the conflict were unfolding at an unprecedented speed. Vornix stood on the bridge of what remained of the Arcanus, his fist clenched tightly around the armrest of his command chair. The bridge was in disarray, monitors cracked, the flicker of malfunctioning systems casting eerie shadows over the faces of his officers. The silence was deafening, broken only by the low hum of damaged machinery. "We are not done yet," he muttered through gritted teeth, his voice low but laced with fury. He wasn't about to let the humans have this victory. The Empire had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. There was no reason why these primitive humans should be any different. "Commander," an officer called, her voice hesitant. "We've lost contact with the remainder of the fleet. Their navigational systems are completely offline." Vornix's eyes narrowed. The humans had outsmarted them. Their technology was far beyond what any sensor scan had indicated. The cloak of deception was now thick, and the Empire was suffocating in it. Their dominance had evaporated, and there was only one thing left to do. "Prepare the last stand," Vornix commanded, his voice sharp. "We may be cornered, but the humans won't leave this system without feeling the full weight of the Empire." Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, Shadow watched intently as the remnants of the Imperial fleet struggled to regroup. Their failure was evident, but the battle was far from over. Humanity had struck a massive blow, but they were still vulnerable. The Empire's final retaliation was coming, and Shadow knew it would be a fight to the very end. The room around him was dim, lit only by the glow of hundreds of monitoring screens. "Phase 3 is ready," he said softly, tapping a few keys. A hologram of the solar system flickered to life, and the locations of the remaining Imperial ships were highlighted in bright red. "Initiate the final strike," Shadow ordered. On Earth, General Harper stood before the Global Command Center's strategic table, her eyes flicking between the real-time holographic display and the officers around her. The Empire's fleet was in retreat, but Harper knew better than to underestimate them. The Empire was not one to go down without one last, crushing blow. Their pride, their desire for revenge, was their greatest weapon. "All fleets, hold your positions," she ordered. "We've done well, but we're not finished yet. The Empire will try to make one final push, and we need to be ready." Her voice was calm, but beneath that exterior, there was a fire. A fire that burned brighter now than it ever had. Humanity had fought too hard to let the Empire rise again. And if it came down to it, they would face the Empire's last move head-on. The Empire's last gambit. Vornix stared at the viewscreen as the damaged Arcanist drifted closer to Earth's moon. His mind raced, searching for anything that might give him an edge. He had one final option, a last-ditch weapon that had never been deployed in battle before. The Empire had reserved it for the most dire situations. An all-out, annihilative strike designed to decimate entire fleets in a single blow. "Activate the gravity well disruptor," Vornix ordered, his voice a cold whisper of defiance. "Target the human fleet and bring them to their knees." The gravity well disruptor was a weapon of last resort, capable of manipulating gravity fields and creating immense tidal forces, causing ships to be torn apart by the very forces that held them together. It was the Empire's deadliest weapon, but it came at a price. Once activated, it could be used only once, and its effects would be devastating to both sides. But Vornix had nothing left to lose. "General Harper, they've activated the gravity disruptor," one of her officers reported urgently, her face pale as she processed the incoming data. "They're targeting the human fleet directly. If this goes through, it cooled." "I know," Harper interrupted, her voice steady, though her heart raced. She turned to the tactical officers. "We need to move now. All ships, prepare for evasive maneuvers. If we stay in position, we'll be torn apart." But there was no time to react. The disruptor's energy pulses began to build, massive gravitational waves emanating from the Arcanus and spreading outward. The human ships, cloaked and ready to strike, were caught in the initial wave of energy. In the heart of the human fleet, chaos erupted. Ships that had once been invisible and unstoppable now lurched and groaned under the immense pressure of the gravity waves. The once silent ships began to tumble through space, their shields buckling under the strain. "Evasive maneuvers. Evasive maneuvers," shouted the captain of the Vanguard, but the damage had already been done. The human fleet was faltering, the disruptor's effect more powerful than anyone had anticipated. But even as the Imperial fleet pushed forward with their final strike, there was a flicker of hope. "Activate emergency systems," General Harper barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "All ships engage graviton stabilizers now." At that moment, the systems humanity had developed in secret for years, the very systems that had allowed them to outmaneuver the Empire at every turn, began to hum with life. The graviton stabilizers were humanity's ace in the hole, a defense system designed specifically to counteract the gravity manipulations that the Empire used as their ultimate weapon. "It's working," an officer exclaimed, watching as the destabilizing effects of the gravity well began to slow and stabilize. The human fleet, battered and bruised, regained control. Vornix watched in disbelief as the Empire's final weapon began to lose its grip on the human fleet. "How is this possible?" he whispered to himself. He had underestimated them again. The humans had prepared for every eventuality, and now the tide was turning once more. But Vornix wasn't ready to give up. His eyes darkened, and his hands gripped the chair tighter. "Engage the final wave of assault ships," he growled. "We are not losing this war, not today." The battle had reached its peak, and it was no longer about strategy or weapons. It was about will. Humanity's strength, their ingenuity, their refusal to back down, had become their greatest weapon. And as the final wave of the Empire's fleet surged forward, Humanity would fight until the very last ship fell. But the Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the power of human will.